Hello and welcome back to the channel.
Today, we're diving into something a little different, our travel fails.
In today's video, we're sharing some of the funniest, dumbest, and most cringe-worthy travel blunders that we've made.
Stay tuned as we recount our travel fails in the hopes that you can learn from our mistakes. Welcome to World Wanderers.
We're Alicia and Will.
Come wander the world with us.
Some fails came from not realizing the difference in cost of living and the locations we were in. So an example of this was our trip to Bosnia. We were looking at the menu, looking at different food prices, and saw a meat dish that was supposed to be shared between two people.
Well, we thought it was two people.
Yeah. What we thought would be a fairly reasonable price, even for sharing between two people.
I think it was like $25 maybe.
Yeah, low 20s.
Yeah.
And then it came out and the tray was like sized for 10 people. There was no way we were going to finish it.
It was so embarrassing. Like, we ate so much, much food as we could. We stuffed ourselves and there was more than half left over. And we were on a tour for the day. So there was no way to like take a to-go box with us. We just felt so wasteful.
Yeah, it was like all sorts of steaks and sausages and just different kinds of meats and cuts all on one big grilled platter, like a periata you would get, but
yeah,
really good, but way too big.
It was really good. So the takeaway here is, if it says family style and you're not sure how much food that's going to entail, maybe ask the waiter, like, hey, is this good for two people, or is this supposed to feed like your whole extended family? Our next fail is also a case of not doing proper research. We went to Iceland for Christmas a few years ago, and we rented a car and we're going to drive the Golden Circle. And at one of those stops, it was to see Geysir, which is a famous geyser. We were waiting and waiting in the freezing cold, mind you, because there's like 3 hours of sunlight per day in the middle of December.
We were there between Christmas and New Year's for this.
Right. So we were waiting to see this geyser go off. And I'm like, okay, I want to get back in the car where it's warm. I'm dying. We've been out here for like 40 minutes. It's still not going off. And Will wants to keep waiting and waiting to see this famous geyser go off. I'm like thinking it's like Old Faithful in Yellowstone or something. So finally, I'm walking around to get warm. I find a plaque, and it said that while geyser would erupt frequently, as often as every 3 hours once upon a time, the last eruption was in 2016. So basically, we would have been waiting the rest of our lives there if I had not pointed out to you that this geyser is not going to go off. So I think the case here is do your research and know what you're looking at if you're in kind of an isolated place.
Yeah, when you're driving around to check out like different sites yourself.
Yeah, so that was a fail for sure.
One of our best travel fails happened in Cancun last year.
Yeah, so we were finally getting to go swim with the whale sharks.
Which has been one of your dream things for a long time.
Right, it's been on my bucket list for like forever. So we had a short trip down there where the whole point of the trip was to go see these whale sharks, right? We're staying at an all-inclusive with the idea that we'd go out for the day and do this. So on the day it came, where we had our excursion booked, we had pretty bad weather. It was rainy, cloudy,
windy, really choppy, rough seas. Like not really big swells, but like really, really choppy.
Right. So we go out to see these whale sharks on the boat. We go anyway. The tour operator didn't cancel. So we were like, well, if they're game, we're game. So we go out, and this boat ride, mind you, to find the whale sharks is like 2.5 hours straight out from the coast, like 40 or 50 miles, I want to say.
At full speed. And the swells got bigger and bigger. So like, I'm pretty sure my tailbone is still bruised from it 2 years later.
Right, for this like 10-person boat that was just bouncing on the waves over and over and over. So eventually we did find the whale sharks, swam with them, highly recommend.
Fantastic,
awesome.
I would do it again.
Had a great day. But on the way back, the boat came down so hard and hit one of the choppy waters, like waves, that it cracked the hull of the boat.
Yeah, he kept coming over the swells, and like the boat would fall and smack the water, and it was a fiberglass hull. And I'd get a big crack in the hull. And taking on water faster than the pumps could pump it out. So that led to...
They were pretending that everything was okay, right? They were like, okay, everybody just come sit in the front of the boat, And then at one point we saw our tour guide with her goggles bailing out water with her like swim goggles. And I was like, things are not going well back there.
Yeah, they had like the boat driver and then like his assistant or whatever. And the assistant was trying to bail water, and you could see the rear end of the boat starting to, like go down in. And we got to the point, I don't know, we were probably 2.5, 3 miles away from the closest island, maybe a little more, when they had us
Yeah.
all abandon ship and
Yeah,
jump
they
out.
had us jump in the water. They were like, okay, everything's actually not fine. This is a real emergency. Everybody make sure you have your life jackets on and jump in the water. So they had us all jump in the water, and then the boat left to try to make it back to shore. They were like calling over the radio for like Mayday for somebody
Yeah,
to come pick us up. It would have been a little scary if we didn't know how to swim. Like,
which one
which were
lady didn't.
one lady
Yeah,
on our boat, like she just went with her husband to like sit there and watch the whale
yeah.
sharks from the boat, and she put her life jacket on. But I mean, in the end, it was all fine. Another tourist boat came and picked us up. But the moral of the story that we took away from this is just because you can go out and a tour operator is still running doesn't mean you necessarily should.
We did get free T-shirts though,
Yeah,
so
they gave us a free video and free t-shirts. So at the end of the day, I saw my whale sharks. I'm happy. Would recommend. Perhaps not that necessarily recommend that company though. We have also had some calendar related fails. Um, I did one year book a hotel for the completely wrong month when we went for a Christmas party in West Virginia. Luckily, they were super nice and they just gave me a room anyway because they were available. But definitely one of my travel fails is not looking at all the info and making sure that I'm triple checking that I'm booking the right dates.
yeah, you did something very similar too in Peru,
Oh,
which,
I did.
to be fair, you're the one booking everything. So
We did.
yeah,
So in Peru, you show up, and we were getting the train tickets to go to Machu Picchu, which we booked in person at that time, and we were just like, hey, just give us the next available date. We're here in Cusco for like a week, so we booked the train tickets in person for the next date available. And got up at the crack of dawn the next day. We took a like hour-long taxi ride out, and we tried to scan these train tickets, and they're like, these are not valid. And turns out they were for the next day again. So basically, double check your dates is the
yeah.
lesson we have now learned twice.
And we definitely didn't have enough time left to hike to Machu Picchu and back. So
Yeah, since that's like a 4 day
yeah.
trek. So anyway, that's the moral of the story there.
Our next travel fail, we've turned into a bit of a travel hack, actually, and that is flying through Istanbul. We've done it about 10 times now, and I would say missed the majority of our connections in Istanbul.
Right. Either our first flight gets delayed, or it takes too long to get everybody off the plane, or since it's such a huge airport, we're traveling large distances between the two gates, or the connection that the automatic tickets when you book online gives you is way too tight with only like an hour layover in between. But either way, we basically always miss this flight, and we have to end up getting a later one. So we've turned this into our travel
Yeah.
hack, which I'll link the travel hack video here. But basically, if you would like a free hotel for the night and a meal voucher and a longer layover at somebody else's expense, we've done this now where we will purposely book this knowing that we will be spending a night in Istanbul. Love that city.
Free night in Istanbul and breaking up a 28-hour flight can be worth it.
Yeah, would recommend. My next travel fail is one that haunts me to this day. We went to Italy with my parents a few years ago, and we rented a car. We were doing a road trip through about, I want to say, like maybe 8 different cities throughout
Yeah.
Italy. So we had to rent a car, 4 of us. It really made sense. And we're in Rome like the third day we're there, and I'm standing in the elevator getting the keys out of my purse, and I'm clumsy, so I drop them, and they go
Oh,
right down the elevator shaft in between this big of a crack in between the elevator door and the floor. My mom and I looked at each other and we were like, I can't believe this just happened right now. So, like, getting rental car keys to get them to replace them is usually a huge expense and a huge hassle.
mhm.
So, I went down to the front desk distraught, and I was like, is there anything we can do? Luckily, the amazing hotel we were at in Rome like called an elevator service
Yeah.
repairman. He came out within a few hours, like lifted up the elevator and went down into the elevator pit to retrieve my keys, and they gave them to me. I couldn't believe it actually worked out. But luckily, it didn't delay our trip by more than a few hours and could have been a huge hassle and cost me even more time and money to get a replacement. But the lesson here is be super careful with rental car keys if you don't want it to disrupt your trip.
Or anything else that might fit in the crack between an elevator and the other side.
Yeah, so now anytime we live in a high rise building right now, so anytime I have keys in my hand, if I'm in the elevator, I'm like focusing on like these are clasped in my hand. I will not hold them or dangle them by a keychain.
Imagine if that had been your phone.
I know that would have been even worse. Stay tuned for later in the video for phone travel fails.
This next one wasn't really our fault, but we think it's worth the warning anyways, and that's getting your visas early. In particular, here we're talking about Brazil's e-visas.
At least this is our example. In February of this year, we went to Rio de Janeiro and then for a few days, and then we're planning to take a cruise, also again with my parents. They had a new application process they're going through right now, which is an e-visa process. So it basically took a month and a half longer than they stated on their website. And we applied as soon as this visa process opened. So we couldn't really have done it more in advance. But between the back and forth, between messed up documents, they kept saying, which were not really messes up. It was just them being super specific and picky. Like, your bank statement ended a day before the date we wanted to see it on. Or you couldn't see your ears in the travel photo on your passport. It was very nitpicky kind of things. But thankfully, the Brazil e-visa got extended and they've actually moved their deadline back, I believe.
April of 2025 is the deadline now.
So thankfully, we were still able to go on the trip, but had they not moved that deadline back, we would have had to cancel the whole trip because our visas weren't ready in time. We actually got them the moment we landed in Rio de Janeiro. And I think my mom's actually showed up 2 days later. So basically, I would have felt especially bad because I did everybody in our groups. But the lesson here is definitely get your visas well in advance of the stated processing times, because governments can be notoriously slow and things can be delayed due to your fault or the fault of not you.
As far ahead as they will let you.
Along the lines of our visas, our next travel fail is a tale as old as time, and that is forgetting your passports. In our relationship, I'm generally the responsible one. I book everything. I pack everything. You kind of just show up, do some of the driving, and enjoy the trip.
You definitely take care of all the organization.
Yes, I do. And we've been on probably 100 trips in our lifetime, so I tend to have a pretty good track record. But last year, on this same whale watching fiasco trip, we were going to Cancun and we're walking up to security. And that was the moment that I realized I forgot both of our passports at home. I mean, Will doesn't check with me that I've got them because he just assumes I've got them because I've always got them.
I didn't used to check with you that you got
he checks with me now. But basically, I freaked out. We raced home. We took the express lanes on the highway, and luckily it was the morning, so there wasn't any traffic. And we got back just in time. But moral of the story is, even if you've been on a million trips and you've never forgotten your passports before, just ask your partner, like, hey, you got the passports?
Turns out they won't let you go without them.
Yeah.
Our next travel fail was a costly one. So a few years back, we went to the UK and rented a car. No one had told us about the congestion zones or the signs that they're marked with, which are like little signs with a C on them in London. And the tickets are automatically charged to your rental car license plate.
Yeah, basically congestion zones are like, we don't want every tourist in the world driving by Buckingham Palace. So they have these zones that are basically tolls that you have to prepay in advance to say, hey, I want to drive through this zone. I'm willing to pay my $10 or whatever it is ahead of time, and then I can drive through it.
Yeah, they're linked to like time of day of the week, and there's different costs if you prepay, if you realize you went through it that day and pay that day. And then the higher cost is if you don't realize you went through it and you have to wait to get the ticket in the mail.
Right, exactly. So we drove through, we were staying in a hotel in the center of the city. So we drove by these congestion zones, or I should say through, multiple times and didn't even realize it was a thing until the tickets started showing up and being auto charged to our credit card. Europcar, which I would not recommend incidentally, added a process fee on top of this ticket, which turned out to be even more of the ticket. So they kept automatically charging my credit card that was on file. And I think in the end, it was about $1,000. We got like 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, we think we got at least 5, and it was like 800 pounds, which at the time I think was like $1,000.
Yeah. So anyway, this was a nightmare basically, where I was like, are these just going to keep coming for the next few days? I have no idea how many times we drove through those. So all in all, this was an unexpected surprise. So we learned our lesson and we made sure not to drive through the same kind of thing, the ZTLs in Italy. But this is definitely a travel fail we have learned from. Our other London fail was on the London Eye. Would you like to tell this story?
Yeah, so the London Eye, if you're not familiar with it, is the big giant Ferris wheel. I think it's like a 30-minute round trip rotation right on the Thames River in London. And we both had our backpacks. You know, just traveling with our backpacks, and I put mine under the seat in the middle. And then when I got off the London Eye, I didn't grab my backpack.
Yeah, I didn't know he had put it under there. So he left it. And as you're exiting, they have mirrors and they're going to do like a security sweep to check to make sure that nobody's leaving anything behind, like a bomb. And they did find his bag and they stopped the whole Ferris
Mm-hmm.
wheel, which basically never stops. It's continuously rotating to make sure a terrorist didn't plant it there. So the moral of the story is that when you hear those announcements about unattended baggage in airports, I guess they actually mean it.
I did get my bag back though.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest travel fail would be the loss of phones.
Yeah, I love to remind him about this one. The lost phone on the water taxi in Venice, the lost phone where you snorkeled with it in your pocket before phones were waterproof. I think there's been a few other
Yeah, the
occasions.
one in Venice, we were taking a water taxi somewhere, and I think he just left it in the seat. And then time we turned around and went to go get it, it was gone. And then the other one snorkeling, we were at it was the all inclusive resort in the Dominican. You know, sitting in the chairs, having a good time. Slid it in my pocket,
Drinking,
and
most likely.
yeah, the morning mimosas. Slid it in my pocket and got in the ocean.
Yeah, so the lesson here is make sure you back up your photos and stuff because you never know if they're going to disappear and you're not going to have them that night. And also bring some backup entertainment because I do remember on these trips for the remaining half of the trips that you're like, "Hey Alicia, can I borrow your phone? Hey Alicia, I'm bored. Do you have something to do?" So maybe bring a book or a crossword puzzle or something with you in case you do not have access to your phone, which is going to be your primary and only source of entertainment.
I generally have two sources of entertainment that I enjoy. It's my phone and annoying her.
Yeah, check, check. Thanks so much for watching. Have you done any of the same things we have, or do you have a favorite travel fail that still haunts you?
Let us know in the comments.
And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more travel content. Safe travels.